session of the chapters workshop, and we had a good session a couple of weeks ago, and uh, I have nothing more to add right now. Alon, you can go ahead with the procedures.
Thank you very much again, everybody. Welcome to the second session of the MSU chapter workshop. Again, today's focus is going to be on the chapters. So right now, I'm gonna give you just the house rules of what's going to go on. So as we go along, please mute yourselves as you go through this presentation. Coming in, you're going to be muted, but when it's time for you to talk, please either raise your hand. We'll go through that procedure on the next slide. But once you're done, please mute yourself. Please minimize your interruptions. Like I haven't done yet, I do apologize. But mute your phones, especially if you are talking and if you are a presenter. Again, please raise your hands if you want to be recognized as we go through today's proceedings and talk through the different sessions as we go along. As again, we are organized here, so the only thing I ask is please don't talk over each other. I know there's going to probably be some topics of discussions that will probably strike the soul. So if it strikes the soul in the wrong way, please don't allow it to have an outburst and where we're just going on the mic and just start talking. Let's be respectful for one another. Again, as we go, and we've been in a pandemic for at least 2.5 years, and we've been doing audio visual conferences on different platforms, Zooms, WebEx, Google Meet. If you begin to get audio and visual freeze, I hate to say it, it is potentially on your side of the house. So usually that means cut off your video. There's probably something going on with your router. Sometimes you have to dial out and dial back in. That is also a solution to fix what's going on if you're getting a freeze in feedback. Again, we're all family here. We're presidents and leaderships within our chapters. So the only thing we ask is please just be mindful of that and let's act like adults. The last thing I want to do is kick everybody out or kick someone out of here, which I can do. And believe me, I could block you from not coming back into this session. So if you haven't been on WebEx in a little while, there's some things that have changed. So this is the interface that you're probably seeing on your side of the house, other than my goofy face, but everything on the bottom is the same. I'm sorry. So on the far left, you're going to have a mute and unmute. That's for audio. Then you're going to have a mute and unmute for video. So there's not too many people in here. From what I'm seeing, there's 19 people. So, this is a conference. This is a workshop. So it's always good to see faces versus hearing voices and seeing names. So if you want to turn on your video, especially when you're talking, it makes it a lot better and a lot more interactive in a more informal way. From there, again, they moved the raise your hand icon so it was more prevalent. So you could just press one button there. So please raise your hand. Once you're done speaking, please put your hand down as we go along. They also have icon buttons. So again, if you like what you hear, you could clap, laugh, giggle, party on. If we are briefing for the presenters, you can't ask the presenters to slow down or speed up. That's what the rabbits and the turtles is for. So that'll give us as a presenter to please slow down or speed up. From there, if you want to see who's in the actual presentation or the workshop, you can see the participants. Again, next to that, you have a chat box where you could actually add the chats. Again, that's why I would like you to add your name, chapter, and your position. So we have that for the roll call. And to help the actual presenters, instead of trying to extrapolate from the chat box, there is a Q&A section. So if you have a question, you could actually put it there and actually put it in a different section of WebEx that will allow individuals to see those questions and answer that in another fashion. So it makes things a little bit cleaner versus trying to filter through the chat for that question, and so we won't miss that question from the folks. So from there, I'd like to turn it back over to Mike Brown. Mike Bell. I'm sorry.
You can call me Mike. We're all friends here. I've already done my welcoming comments. I just ask that we stay on schedule and let's not try to get off the glide path today, so we can finish on time. And you have the agenda before you, and I'll now turn it over to Alon Peoples for the first topic.
All right. And again, we will be powering through this. This is another house note. No, so like again, a lot of new faces and a lot of new names on here. So when you start, please introduce yourself with your first name and your chapter that you represent. And because we're going straight through this, if you need to take a break or grab a coffee or another choice, a beverage of choice, you could do that on your own or go to the bathroom. So that's on you. We're all playing by big girls, big boys rules up in here. So I would like to start off today's topic, talking about development of a chapter's strategic plan at the chapter level. So we talked about this during last week's or the last session, session one. So I want to first start off and say I am a chapter president, and and I take this very seriously. So what I did was I wanted to make sure I pulled together a whole bunch of resources for you. So because we have a limited amount of time with those resources are there for you to actually go through different drills within for yourself and within your chapters to understand some of the points that I'm going to talk about within this presentation. Here you see what those templates are, where you have the overarching one, which is the chapter strategic template, where it's a plug and play, but then you have individual templates that's going to show you how to do each of these different parts that I will go over within the presentation for today. So I want to make sure I give you this up front. So I know I'm going to go a little bit fast, but please, this is an interaction. This is the dialogue. Please ask me questions as we go forward. So from there, this is the agenda that we're going to go through. I'm going to spend very little time really describing what a strategic plan is. I'm going to talk about the elements, and then I'm going to talk about how you're going to get through and build a strategic plan. That's going to be the bulk of the actual presentation itself. Now, talking about what a strategic plan is. So really, it's a disciplined way of determining what is an organization is and what does it serve to do. Bottom line, it helps you truly shape and describe what we are. And also, it helps you as a leader or leaders within your organization to determine where to spend your resources. The biggest thing that we have with anything that we do in life that we can't get back is time. Time, that human capital, and money. Those are resources that we don't have a lot of, but we have to make sure it's pointed in a way that we can actually get the biggest bang for our buck. And looking at a strategic plan is a way that, and developing that is a way that we can actually focus our efforts within that short amount of time that we have in our leadership positions. Now, there are some pros and cons of doing this. So there's more pros than cons. So as you can see, there's a lot of pros, and I'll let you look through that. But again, I'm gonna talk about the cons. And the reason why I put these cons down here, and I'm gonna focus on that, and I put time as a con. Time really is that con because one, we don't have a lot of it. So because we don't have a lot of it, you got to spend time up front getting after this, getting after it. So it's a double-edged sword. And going after this actual strategic plan, there's going to be a cost because anytime when you start putting together a plan, you're going to realize that whatever we try to do as a chapter and as leaders, there's going to be a cost that's going to be upfront, which is sometimes a good thing now that you're realizing whatever you're trying to get after, there's going to be an upfront cost. So it's going to be a con at the beginning, but it is going to improve decision making or what you want to do in the long run within your chapter. And another con that is a very big deal is it's going to require feed input from a lot of members within your organizations. Sometimes I've been in situations in where we as an organization, the only person that put in feedback or input into the strategic plan was the actual leader. So it's a double-edged sword, and depending on the maturity of your actual chapter or organization, you might be the only one doing it, and you might take the brunt of this workload by yourself. So I want to talk to you about the elements of the actual strategic plan itself. So this is a straight hierarchical look at the strategic plan. You really got your mission statement, vision, and values sit at the top, goals, objectives, and then below that is the action plans. And below that is the integrated timeline. That is looking at it from a flat look at this strategic plan. Looks pretty simple. And it really is if you take a look at it and look at the different steps that you have to get after this. There we go. Don't freeze on my computer. So again, there's 7 basic elements, and we just talked about all of those different elements. The one thing that we didn't see on that last slide was a SWOT analysis. Everything that we do in an organization requires SWOT, and we'll talk about SWOT and what it stands for later on in the presentation. You don't see integrated timeline in here. It's not a element. It's not a basic element. It is actually called an advanced element. However, again, as we talked before, as a pro and con, time is a factor we don't have a lot of resources of. So even though it is advanced, it's still required, even though it should be considered basic. I'm showing this to you again to show you that even at the MSUAA level, thanks to the direction of Madam President Phyllis, she took a group of individuals at the national level and put them through this drill where they came up with a vision, a mission, and core values. And then below that, when she came up with these, and she talked about this last session, she came up with high goals. And these were the 4 goals that she chose, that the team chose, that was input from the organization or the body through a survey of what we had to do. And it was grouping and things of that nature and some sausage making to come up with these 4 goals. Below that, which I'm not going to show you, there are some objectives that are tied to each of these goals. We did not show you that last time, but there's more sausage making under these big umbrellas. And we as chapters have to understand that whatever we do when it comes down to building a strategic plan is more than just PowerPoint and a couple of words that we splash on a actual slide or a piece of paper. So I'm going to stop right there. Do I have any questions as of right now? All right. Nothing in the chat, nothing, no hands raised. So I will say this. Most of the steps that I'm going to go through as a chapter, and especially going through this the first time, you don't have to go through every single step. There's some steps that you really, really, really need to do, and some steps as you mature and you build your team, you could get after them a little bit later. So we'll talk about that and we'll get after that. So I see Denise, you have your hand up. Denise Barnes.
Yes, I thought I had put it in the Q&A, but maybe I didn't.
Yes.
Going back to the first slide, give an example of when you say cost financial, it's a con.
So sometimes depending on your organization, like say for an example, like a cost, like a con, like if you have to have like a planning conference, right? Because like the you have to develop this, and you say for example, like you have to take your entire say board and do like a weekend retreat, where now you like put you hide your team away somewhere like at a little retreat for like 2 days where you're doing this drill along with other things to prepare and get this information ready for your chapter. So that's a con that you wasn't expecting to have, but in the long run, it is providing you this great product that's going to give you a roadmap for your chapter. So that's potentially a con that you wasn't expecting.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I do see it in the Q&A. I'm sorry, thank you, but thank you, Denise. All right. So the first thing is dealing with the your vision statement. So again, vision statement, very simple. It's one to describe that nirvana of communication to your membership of what you're dreaming, what they are aspiring to be. Usually with your vision statement is very simple, one or two sentences to say we as a chapter are trying to be the best chapter that's going to support the students that are coming out of such and such area. That's it. It's not going to get into all of the minute details. It's something that your people can embrace, and they know whenever they speak to somebody and they talk about your element, your chapter, they can say that with confidence, and they know that is the vision. So everything that they do is tied to that vision, or with that perfect that perfect state of the chapter wants to be in the future, today and in the future. So that is what your vision statement is going to be. So again, and I don't know, I messed this up and threw this in here, but again, this is something that we've done for committees before, and I've done with committees before, where just like at the national level, we did a vision statement that's um, tied to a mission statement and the values. So again, this is another way, just like how with the national level they had their mission, values, and vision statement. This is just another way to present it, but we did it at the committee level. Again, now your mission statement is describing how you are going to do whatever to get to that state of nirvana. How you're going to do it. Very important. So you got your state to be the best to support your students that are going into Morgan from your area. Now, how are you going to do that is in your mission statement. And that's by doing X, Y, and Z. They have to be generic. But again, because you got to have the flexibility to go left or right. But you don't want to say we're going to do a fundraiser every year. That's not a mission statement. But if you want to say I'm going to, by raising funds, by doing what is it called, outreach programs, and something else, two to three things, you want to keep it very generic and broad in your mission statement, so you can have the flexibility to go left or right with anything below your mission statement being your goals that's going to be tied to that mission statement. Next is your core values. So your core values is very interesting, because as an organization like the MSUAA, we developed core values based off of, first we took the Morgan MSU values, and then we took that and then we adjusted some of those, and we made up our own core values at the MSUAA level that describes us as an organization. Now again, from there, we as chapters have the ability to take what is at the MSUAA level and describe ourselves as a chapter, because each of our chapters are unique. We're all not the same. So you can decide how you want to describe yourself and what are your values as a chapter. Once you take a look at that, you could come up with an acronym that would spell out something that deals with you. Like, so for example, like for ROTC, my acronym is LEAD. So I got leadership, agile, um oh man, duty, and I can't remember my fifth one because I'm sleepy right now. But I got leave and selfless service. So again, you could come up with an acronym for that, and when it's all said and done, you could define that. There is an actual worksheet where there's 500 words of you could do whatever you want, and you could define your own values and give it a definition. So I see Angela, she has a hand up. Angela.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, ma'am.
Okay. So I will speak. Hi, this is Angela from the PG Alumni Chapter. So speaking for our chapter, we pretty much adopted the vision and the mission statement per the MSU Alumni Association. So it seems like we have flexibility to change it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, you have flexibility.
Okay.
You have flexibility to change it. You don't, because again, what you're doing is called nesting. As long as your strategy, your mission, your vision is still aligned with your higher element, which is the association. As long as it's still feeding into that, what you're doing, you can change it. And again, because again, you are separate. Just like for me as ROTC, my mission is just what I do is a little bit different from what PG does. You focus on the region, PG County, while I focus on a program at the school. So it's a little bit different how we do business. But again, we still supporting students. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I just want to make sure because we just took the route of if the alumni association says this is their vision and mission statement, then we should fall in line with that. So it
Yes.
seems like we have flexibility to change it, whatever makes sense at the chapter level.
Yes, you could change
Okay.
it that fits your personality.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other question? Denise, I see you still got your hand up, ma'am. Got another question? All right, Denise, I'm gonna lower your hand then, ma'am.
I'm
All right.
sorry, I didn't lower my hand.
All right, don't worry about it. I helped you out there, ma'am.
Okay.
So the next thing we want to talk about is the SWOT. So once you come up with all of those vision, mission, core values, it's time to do a SWOT analysis. Now, really what it comes down to, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is the hardest thing for anybody individually or an organization to do because people naturally do not want to talk about their weaknesses and they don't like to talk about their threats and they don't like to put it on paper. So you as an organization need to come to the realization that you have to identify truly what your weaknesses and what your threats are. You could sit there all day and say what you're strong at. And you can come up with a list of 1,000 things of what you're strong at. But you need to make sure that you identify everything that you're weak at and be brutally honest. Because if you're not honest on your SWOT analysis, when it's time for you to develop your goals and objectives, you're going to be off. This is a very important step because this drives truly the next part of dealing with your strategic plan, because it's dealing with your people and your processes. And if you are lying to yourselves, you're going to make up unrealistic goals and unachievable objectives. So this is just an example of an analysis just based off of an actual organization that I was playing with at one time, and I just threw this together and took and then kept them anonymous to protect the weak and things of that nature. But again, your SWOT analysis has to be honest, and you got to have thick skin doing this. And this is the hardest thing to do. Any questions on this? Great. So, goals. So when you look at your goals have to be something where you're driving long term. When you're looking long term, you're looking 3 to 5. most of the time with our organizations and what our terms for our leadership is usually 2 years. Some of us have the ability to do multi-terms, which is usually 4 if you have like 2 terms or something to that nature. But most of us usually get 2 terms in the positions that we're in. So, but by definitions, long term is anything 3 to 5 years. So when you're setting your goals, just remember that your goal is something long term. It's nothing that you're going to achieve within that first 2 years of doing this. So you want to make sure that that goal is something broad. So again, if you remember one of the actual uh uh goals of the MSUAA that Phyllis put out to us, one was membership and outreach, one was communications. So that is a long-term goal that you wanted us to improve, where that is long standing. And because of that, we are able to do something with that for a number of years. And with that, it will sustain the test of time. Because no matter what change, technology and people change, that goal will always be prevalent within our organization. So you have to look at goals that way. Now, some of the things that you want to hone in on, especially while you're in your seats, are your objectives. Your objectives are usually year-long objectives. So that's where you have to get those objectives. And now you're focusing on, okay, now that I got my goals set, and you have like potentially 2 to 5 goals. You want to stay between 2 to 5. Don't go crazy and make 10. You want to whittle it down to something manageable. 2 to 5, 3 to 5. Now you got your objectives. You want to make sure under your objectives, you want to keep it the same, 2 to 5, 3 to 5, and put objectives under that. Now that you have those objectives, now you can start getting certain things, and you start getting real finite details of what objectives you want to achieve that's going to help that goal to progress forward. So an example, like for me being the communication lead for that goal at the national level, is do outreach for alumni. So that's me working with social media. How am I going to do that? So it's like, so you got to work those different plans and work those different goals, and I got to put a timeline together. And we'll talk about the timeline next. But that's how you get the finite detail, and you get shorter objectives within a year. So, and then when you do that, that's when you start talking about developing goals. That's when you start putting together what's called a SMART statement. And looking at your SMART statement is a very easy statement, but it's a very hard statement to put together because people don't understand this. SMART stands for specified, measurable, obtainable, relevant, and time bound. So when you look at those 5 different elements, that helps you to develop something that keeps your people that are doing this, and you as a leader to keep your people accountable, to say you said that you were going to do something. And looking at that quick objective, you could say, hey, you, Alon, you suck because you wrote this down. This is your contract to me, and you failed. Well, we don't say that because we love each other, but I say that in my mind. But that's what objective, a SMART statement looks like. So an example is like the chapter will increase their financial members by 5 within 6 months of establishment of a membership committee. So again, you got something specific, you got something measurable, attainable, it's relevant because we want more members, and it's time bound. All of those different elements is in that one statement. So once that committee was set, then I could hold that committee chair to that standard. Any questions on the SMART statement? All right. Jump to the next slide. So the next slide is dealing with the action plan. So really what the action plan is really like for each objective that you have. And again, you have your smart statement, which is your objectives, but then your action plan is the details of how you're going to achieve that objective. Doesn't have to be long. Usually is a one pager. Here's an example of how to do that in the resource folder. And it's really easy. And then you have dates, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and milestones and all this other crazy stuff on that. So it's really is a formula and a blueprint of how you're going to get after that and finish out that objective so you can close that one out and move forward. So really that's all the action plan is. Okay. And it's flexible because we have this thing called Murphy, and he likes to come in there and mess up a lot of things for us. So it's always good to have things written down because sometimes we have to shelf things, because a lot of us shelf things when March of 2020, when everybody said stay home, we shelved a lot of things. So the last thing is integrated timeline. So based off of all your action plans, you can look at that, and like when you have all your integrated timelines, and again, some of these things could be fictional and good plans on the wall, you can start throwing all of those different dates on a calendar. Then you will start seeing that, okay, now me as a chapter and me as having a whole bunch of people, I thought I had a whole bunch of people, we're starting to do a whole bunch of events that are the same. They're all on the same dates. I'm running my people ragged. Now I can start spacing out and really looking at the different resources that I have: people, time, money. Okay, now let's start doing this smart. This is when that Nirvana and PhD stuff comes in here, where you're managing people, time, and places of, okay, let's spread this out because we're burning our people out. And oh yeah, while we're doing that, you still got the other requirements like our BOD meetings and the things that we have to turn in for the national level. So there's other timelines that we got to hit, like homecoming. So that is the importance of this, like these major events that we have here. So you can see linearly like what's going on. And that's very important, because if you don't, you're just going to be winging it. And then now you don't have visibility and forecasting ability within your own chapter. And like young people and old people and everybody like this is just out of control, and this is not even organized, and they don't want to come back. So that's why I say timeline is an advanced element, but it's very basic, but it's needed. So I know I went fast. I know I gave you a lot of stuff, but again, I went through the pros and cons. I went through the 7 basic elements of a strategic plan, with the one advanced being integrated timeline. Um, truly, what are your questions? I know I'm not that good, but what are your questions? All right. All right, Nicole.
So going back, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Nicole Thomas, Alumni Cheerleaders Chapter. So when you stated that we should have our members be a part of the creation of the SOP, how do you, how do you incorporate that or build that meeting for that without it being a extra long meeting, one, and two, I guess a whole bunch of ideas being brought out that could cause confusion.
Okay, so all right, so we mix the terminologies, Nicole. So let me, I know what you're trying to say, but let me help you out.
Okay.
So
Okay.
SOP, standard operating procedures. So that is the procedures of how we do stuff. So
Correct.
two different things. So that's something totally different. So if you're talking about SOPs and strategic plan, two different things.
Okay.
So if you're talking about strategic, and I'll say this for everything that you or we do as leaders, like the way that I work it is I sit there and I brainstorm of what my desired end state, what I want them to have. So I basically come up with, okay, if I want, if I like, it's like for what the strategic plan is, I will come up with like a blank, like fill in the blanks. Like I'll say, okay, for this session, what I want is a vision, a mission statement, and a core values, and maybe and maybe goals, and give it to them in blocks. But you tell them what you want to keep them focused, because that's the only way they could do it. You got to keep them focused on certain tasks. Because again, if you go in there and say, I want this, and you just give them like a broad topic, like I need a strategic plan, then everybody will say they know what a strategic plan is, or they don't know, and then now they win. You know what? You're baking cookies. So if you give them that, and you give them like, hey, this is the drill on how to, like, you give them like resources, like this is how you build a statement, a mission statement. This is how you build a vision statement. This is how you build, these are core value words. Look through this, then come and let's brainstorm together on what we have. And you come up with your own ideas because you already advanced trained based off of this training. You have an idea and you can help direct them into the right path. If that makes sense, Nicole.
It does. Thank
Okay,
you.
no problem. Any other questions? Now again, I put into the chat the link for the survey already. So if you look into the chat, and I think some people came in late, and I'll put it again. So you could, while we're going through the actual workshop, you could go open up the survey and start filling in the survey as we go along instead of waiting to the end. So that's the end of my presentation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Mike and Lloyd to go over parliamentarians in this long briefing. So Mike and Lloyd, over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Alon, and thank you for your presentation. I'm going to try to stick with my basic rules when giving presentations. Be seen, be brief, be gone. Assisting me today will be Lloyd Davis. And let me preface this presentation. This is not my presentation. This presentation was created by Daphne Frank. She was not available to present it, so I told her I would present it. And I felt that I needed a subject matter expert to assist me, and Mr. Lloyd Davis, who is very well, has a really good background in parliamentarian procedures, volunteered to assist. So as we go through the briefing, feel free to ask your questions, and we will be sure to get them answered. And you can put them in the chat. Alon, if you don't mind, as questions come up in the chat, just alert us. Next slide, please. This presentation is to basically go over the Robert Rules of Order and the association bylaws to help you with your chapter. Presentation will benefit the members of the MSUAA and the chapters by allowing them to become more familiar with the Robert Rules of Order. I'm using the Robert Rules of Order 12th edition. I hope you all can see this. Okay, next slide, Alon. Who is Robert anyway? The official the official rule book, Robert Rules of Order 12th edition, newly revised, and the original was written by U.S. Army General Henry M. Robert III. Next slide. This is the agenda we'll be using. We would be going over parliamentarian procedures, recognizing the 5 basic principles, identifying steps for presenting motions, various methods of voting, differentiate between the types of motions, and how Robert Rules of Order apply to our association bylaws and procedures and processes. Next slide, please. The purpose of defined parliamentary procedures. To give every member a chance to be heard, to allow everyone to participate, establish and maintain order in the meetings, and to prevent confusion with discussion meeting agendas. I tell you, when I go to a meeting and there's no agenda, I know there's going to be a problem. Because they're not going to stay on task. There's going to be a lot of ad-libbing. So you should always have an agenda for your meeting. Next slide, please. Here are the 5 principles of parliamentary procedures. Just discuss one. I'm not going to read each of these. You all more organized, you can read them. But the key point is to allow full and free discussion of each idea that's presented, and carry out the rules of the majority and respect the rights of the majority in attendance of the meeting. Next slide. Principal considerations. Understanding parliamentarian terms and quorum and majority. The quorum is usually the majority of registered members or members of those that are financial, etc., to form a quorum. Your bylaws in your chapter will state your requirements for a quorum. And in the majority, it's usually 2/3. 2/3 present equals a majority. And the basics for consideration here are presiding officers' titles. You have to make sure you have each presiding officer has a title and is recognized. Everyone gets a chance to vote their opinion and debate, yay or nay. We'll be going over the 4 methods of voting. And during your meetings, you should only discuss one topic at a time. And the person who makes the motion has the right to discuss it first. And as we all know, the gavel is the power tool. In other words, you've been in meetings when the gavel goes down, that brings everyone's attention back to whoever's leading the meeting. Next slide.
Mike, we have a question.
Okay.
Phyllis Davis.
It's not Phyllis, it's Lloyd.
All right, Lloyd.
Yeah, so if Mike could go back 2 slides, I just want to point out something. Stay right there, that's good.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Yeah. So one of the things that that Mike has pointed out a couple of times is the majority and giving voice to the majority, and of course by democratic rules, the majority rules. Robert Rules of Orders are also put in place to ensure that minority views are heard and that lower number or lower represented ideas are not abused, so that using the system of RRO, Robert Rules of Orders, the minority has a chance using the process of motions or privilege motions and motions in general to present the minority view. So I just want to make sure that we hit that so we don't think that it's in place just as a representative form of making the minority view prevalent.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, we're on slide number 8. Did we skip a slide? Oh, okay, there we are. Here are the basics, principles, order business. I've already mentioned you got to have a set agenda, and the agenda should have a purpose, which keeps the meeting moving, just like this workshop. This workshop has a purpose. You may not believe it has a purpose, but it does have a purpose to assist the chapters as well as the association. And you also have set by call to order. You have minutes that are read in the meeting prior to the meeting beginning. You conduct a roll call. It's important to identify the key officers during the roll call. And you have reports by chairpersons and unfinished and new business and adjournment. Next. We're now going to motions. There are several types of motions. You have a main motion, a privilege motion, incidental motions, subsidiary motions, and motions that bring questions before the group. A motion is a formal way to bring an idea, proposal, plan, action before the group. A motion is an orderly way of conducting business. A motion calls for discussion and action by the group. Next slide, please. The main motion. Is usually the main topic or idea for debate or discussion. Incidental main motion does not initiate business. And you all can read most of this. Let's see. Both the person who made the motion and the person who seconded the motions must agree that it be withdrawn. So you've been in meetings when someone will give a motion, and Lord, you can chime in on this. Someone will present a motion, and then later after it's discussed, they'll withdraw. They ask that that motion be withdrawn. Any questions on that? Next slide. Privileges. This deals with special matters of pressing importance, and it does not relate to the business on the floor. That's the key issue. I've been in meetings, and someone will stand up. I'd like to take a point of personal privilege. I don't know if that's the same as a motion of privilege, but these privileges can interrupt any business on the floor without requiring debate or discussion. Example, adjourn, call for orders of the day, fix the time to adjourn, or recess. Those are the examples. Next slide, please. Incidental motion comes from another motion. It is always directly related to business on the floor. And here are some of the characteristics listed here for that. And the example, for example, is appeal, consideration of a paragraph, division of the assembly, division of a question, objection to consideration of a question, a point of order, request, or suspend the rules. This is that's an example of an incidental motion.
Hey, Mike, let me point out something here.
Yes, please do.
So this is Lloyd. So the language that's being used here when it refers to a question, is very specific to Robert Rules of Order. So in this case, question and motion are synonymous. So if you're referring to something as a question on the floor or a question or dividing a question, it typically means that you have a motion and an incidental motion is made to divide it into two parts. So that's what's meant by a question. So in the example here, it says division of a question. That means division of the main motion into two parts or more. And generally, it means that there are two things in that main motion that are significant to the body, and somebody thinks that, you know, and most often than not, the person wanting to divide it, they agree with one part, but they don't agree with the other part, so they want to divide the question. Um, the other two point of order usually is a point of order that the motion is generally something in contravention to the bylaws, and the motion cannot stand on its own, or a request for consideration to the person making the main motion. So I just wanted to point out those couple of things.
Thank you so much, Lloyd. Next slide, please. Subsidiary motion. A subsidiary motion is linked to a main motion to aid in its disposition. Subsidiary motions can be made while a main motion is still being considered. And here are the characteristics. They never stand alone, must be decided before the assembly can act on the main motion. Examples here are amendment, commit to refer, lay on the table, limit, extend the debate, postpone to a certain time, postpone indefinitely, or go back to the previous question. Lloyd, did you want to add anything to that?
Just a little bit of clarification on a couple of things. When it says never stand alone, so for example, you couldn't just say make a motion to I make a motion to commit to refer something to, and that means that you want to refer it to another to a subcommittee, or you refer it for further investigation or something like that. I mean, it would make sense that you would have to be talking about a question, a motion that is currently on the floor. Lay on the table means we want to basically, it's much like postponing it, but lay on the table means you're laying it on the table to come up at another agenda. Postpone to a certain time, of course, you're going to say we want to postpone voting on this until some period of time, and it has to be exact. Postponed indefinitely is self-explanatory.
Thank you, Lloyd. Next slide. Motion, bring a question again before the assembly to reevaluate a decision made earlier. This requires a second. This is debatable. Requires a majority vote. Whoever does this cannot interrupt another speaker. If passed, the motion to be reconsidered is handled as if it were never voted on. Can only be made by the person who voted on the winning side. Lloyd, could you kind of go into detail on that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is something that folks should try to stay away from, right? Because this could put you in a do loop of going over and over and over things again, right? I've seen this abused where somebody voted for something on the winning side, they did it by mistake, and they want to bring a motion to reconsider. And so basically, and it explains it here, it means that the vote passed, and we're bringing it up again for reconsideration. That means whatever it is, the motion still stands, but it stands as if it was never voted on. And it can only, like it says, be voted by a person on the winning side, which would mean that there's something that usually goes along with this, which is there are two things that usually go along with this motion: a division of the House or voting by signature ballot, because you have to be able to determine that the person making the motion was actually on the winning side of the vote, right? Otherwise, anybody could, if you had a voice vote, anybody could go, oh, we want to reconsider. So you need to stay away from this as much as possible. And this is one of the advanced things that you'll find that rocket scientists in parliamentary procedures try to use to upset the apple cart.
Lloyd, could you explain dividing of the House to the group, please?
Right. So dividing of the House usually is in plenary sessions where you have people attending who are not qualified to actually vote, right? So, for example, you have a General Assembly and there are only certain people that can vote. In this day and age, your delegates usually have an electronic mechanism that's given to them, and that allows them to vote. In other places where you either had a vote by hand or a vote by voice, what it means is that those folks who are not valid to vote are either asked to leave the General Assembly, or the folks that are valid to vote, they leave and go to someplace else where the vote can take. So dividing of the House means that you want to ensure that the folks who can vote are in fact voting, and those who are not cannot.
Thank you, sir. Next slide. This is a continuation of what Mr. Davis just discussed. You have a reconsidered main motion. You can rescind, and you have to have a 2/3 majority vote. And here's an example. Madam President, I move to rescind the motion adopted at the January meeting to have a cookout on March 1st for all Morgan alumni members. That's just an example. Continue to the next slide, please. This is continuation. Take from the table, as Mr. Davis explained. And here's another example. Madam President, I move to take the motion that the chapter have a cookout for the members off the table. Are there any questions? Next slide, please. We'll quickly go over the voting methods. We have the voice vote that Mr. Davis just mentioned in his explanation. Show of hands, rising to vote, ballot vote. We're all familiar with the voice vote when you have the yays or nays, and you'll hear everyone say yay, and then you'll hear maybe one nay, so the vote passes. Then you have the show of hands vote, where you have people raise their hand, right hand or whatever hand, and they count the votes. Next slide. You also have a method where you have rising to vote. This is used to verify voice vote that we just discussed, and it requires a 2/3 majority. And then you have the ballot vote, a method involving a written vote, or as Mr. Davis mentioned, an electronic process. Next slide, please. A couple points here. The chair only votes in event of a tie, or to make a vote a tie, or when there's a secret ballot used, or when he or she is part of the assembly. Any questions? Next slide, please. You should always have, for your meetings, you always should have an order of business, and Robert Rules of Order helps to do your order of business. You have a call to order. Some organizations have a pledge or a prayer. You have the roll call, the reading of the minutes, reports by the officers, president, officers, and committees, unfinished business, new business, announcements, not part of business or for voting, and then adjournment. Any questions? Next slide, please. Here's the wrap up of miscellaneous information. There can only be one main motion on the floor at a time, which we discussed. A member cannot talk against his own or her own motion, but can vote against it. If a vote is tied, it automatically fails. Only qualified members are allowed to vote, and the chair may ask for a standing vote. 2/3 is needed to suspend the rules, close the nominations, and previous questions rescind a motion. Mr. Davis, is there anything there that you want to go expound on?
Yeah, Mike. Actually, you can stop right here. This is fairly self-explanatory. I just want to go back to one thing you had said at the beginning. A point of personal privilege and privileged motions are two separate things, right? So
Okay.
a point of personal privilege usually attends to like a person with seniority. For example, in an assembly where you have delegates and you have the president or the immediate past president or someone of distinction can rise and ask the chair for a point of personal privilege. That is separate and apart from those motions that are privileged motions, right? So privileged motions are generally motions that do not have the opportunity for debate and are not amendable. For example, one of the privileged motions is a motion to adjourn, right? It's simple. Madam Chair, Madam President, I move to adjourn this meeting. It's not debatable, it's not amendable, it's yay or nay, up or down, according to what the bylaws are. So just want to point out that there is a difference between a point of personal privilege and privileged motions.
Thank you for that, because I always got that confused. So thank you very much.
Hey, Mike, we have a question from the floor. Nicole?
So, so I know all of these are the responsibility of the parliamentarian, but do we need to share this information with our chapter members? One, and two, when you're given a motion, do you have to give the particular type of motion it is?
Okay, I'll answer the first one. I'll let Mr. Davis answer the parliamentarian piece. This information should be given to all your members. And also, I'm going to explain at the end of this presentation, there are 2 additional workshops that were given that your members can go and view as a refresher. Lloyd, can you answer the other question, please?
Yeah, it's not necessary for a person to say this is a main motion or this is a general motion or this is an incidental motion or even a privileged motion. That's not necessary. What is necessary is that, as Mike said, Mr. Bell said at the outset of his response, what is necessary is that everyone have
He froze.
can flow by a process that they can be effective, efficient.
Hey, Lloyd.
Yes.
Lloyd, you froze up on us. So you were saying
Just
that.
when you
So you
when
froze.
you went back, when you were stating every person should have, that's when you froze.
Okay, so everybody should have a general understanding of the rules of order and what motions, how to make a motion and how to conduct themselves in a meeting. Robert Rules of Orders are not meant to be some sort of officious, bureaucratic type, umbrella that you beat people over the head and people are always jumping up with point of order or this kind of thing. It's meant so that meetings flow effectively, efficiently, and that you have a method and a process of recording what is happening in the meeting. Sometimes by general acclamation, just the way that an organization operates, things are going to flow. And that as long as they're flowing and that the minority and the majority both have a voice and that things are not getting too much out of discombobulated and out of order, just let the meeting flow. But it's going to use this process so that it's effective, efficient, and coordinated in a fashion that everybody has a say, and it's according to a generally accepted process.
Thank you, Lord. Next slide, please.
Wait, we got the hand raised by TC Newman. TC, you're muted.
Okay. Mike, in your statement, you mentioned 2/3 majority. Now, if your bylaws say majority in votes, explain the difference when you were saying 2/3 versus what your bylaws call for in a vote. I mean, is it 2/3 all the time, or can a simple majority win a motion?
Well, I was explaining in my definition, thank you, sir. Well, I was explaining, and Lloyd can back me up on this. The majority equals 2/3. That was my explanation. So
let me be clear that up.
right. Thank you, Lord. He froze.
Unmute.
No, he froze.
Right? So
Lord,
unless,
you have to go back because you froze.
okay, at the bottom of this page, there is an explanation that says 2/3 vote is needed for certain types of motions, right? That's the general concept. So unless the bylaws specifically state that a majority, simple or otherwise, is needed for any one of these types, the general rule is 2/3 of the members of course you have to establish a quorum, but 2/3 of the quorum or 2/3 of the assembly have to vote in the affirmative for one of these types of motion. Again, the caveat is unless the bylaws state
Unless the bylaws state something different.
But generally, it just takes a majority vote.
So it's based off of your bylaws. So if it's not stated in your bylaws, that is the Robert's Rules of Order. That's a standing rule.
that is the standing rule is 2/3 is required for these types of motion, and in almost every case it's a privileged motion unless your bylaw says a majority, simple majority, which is 50% plus one, or something other than a simple majority is required. Yes.
Thank
DC,
you.
does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to briefly go over the association stand rules for bylaws, for the bylaws committee. And we're always looking for members to participate on the association committees. The bylaw committees are assigned as consultants to the association and chapter submissions. The parliamentarian shall be appointed by the president of the association. The parliamentarian is not an officer, but a consultant to the president and the president, and a request on as requested on as needed basis. The parliamentarian is not a member of the executive board. And submission of bylaws and amendments will be conducted as voted by the association, or in the event an amendment has direct conflict with the organization. Submission of chapter bylaws are required to be approved by the association. Next slide. Submission of bylaws and amendments will be conducted as voted by the association or in the event an amendment has direct conflict with the organization. And, a request is sent out to all the chapters. Chapters shall vote on the association submissions. Draft of all submissions will be vetted and conducted and consolidated. All submissions, and make sure all submissions are valid. No changes may be made, any submissions, unless approved by the author or the chapter. Chapters voting representatives shall have at least 30 days before the homecoming business meeting to make any changes and to vote. Next slide. Was there any question over what I just went over with the association and the bylaws submittals? Okay, I'm at the end. In summary, go back, please. In summary, these are the takeaways. You can see them listed here. I would like to thank Mr. Lloyd Davis for his participation and assisting me in this presentation, as well as Ms. Daphne Franks, who put this together. And at the bottom, you see, as a reinforcement to the information presented today, it's recommended that you view the parliamentarian workshop that was presented by Dr. Mona Calhoun in January 2022, and that's available on the organization's website. Also, there's also a presentation presented by Ms. Daphne Franks. I appreciate everyone's patience with me going through this topic. It's always tough doing somebody else's briefing, but I really appreciate Mr. Lloyd Davis for assisting. Thank you.
Yes, I'm up.
Yep, Sam, you're up, sir.
Okay, hey, good afternoon, everyone. Sam Chisholm, and I will be briefing this presentation in conjunction with Xavier Tidwell. However, he had to be away today, so I will be doing this on my own. Can we go to the next slide? So one of the key things that we'll be talking about here today is elections in the chapter elections. One of the key things that you'll see that come out of this as we move along in these slides is commitment, commitment, commitment. And you'll see that in a lot of the things that we talk about. A lot of the stuff that you will see here, for those of you that have probably been involved in other organizations, be it fraternal organizations, sororities, anything like that, this information is not new to you. This is just stuff that we're going to give you as a reminder about some of the things that we'll do. As you can see on this slide, I'm a retired lieutenant colonel. I was the president for the ROTC Alumni Association for 2 terms. You can see what Mr. Tidwell has done during his time here, and he's been very active too. So if you got any questions, any comments on anything, feel free, to ask those, as I move along, throw your hands up. This is interactive. You don't just have to listen to my voice. I am not going to sit here and brief every word on this slide for you, because I take it that individuals can read these slides, but I'm just going to point out a couple of good highlights. The next slide, please. So what we'll talk about here in these four, what are the characteristics? What are the characteristics for chapter officers for these four individuals? Be it the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. Next slide, please. You heard me mention this before, and I talked about commitment. I can honestly tell you that, one of the key things that you got to have when you're looking at, either wanting to run for these positions or looking at somebody that you're going to have in these positions, you want to make sure that you have commitment. Preparation definitely have to be there, accessibility, innovation, and all those. But the key is commitment, because if you're not committed to what you're doing, when you're, at the helm, or you have someone at the leadership position in these, in the Alumni Association, then, that's going to be a big problem for you. Next slide. So you see, these are some of the things that we say make up a good leader. Again, all of us are Morgan grads, so I think we know what makes up a good leader. I'm pretty sure a lot of us are leaders in other organizations, be it professionally in our jobs, or again within fraternities or sororities. So you can see these are some of the things that we say, make up a good leader. But one of the key things that I want to talk about there is that that good leader cannot do this by him or herself. They're going to have to be able to get people on board with them. So you see that inspiration that you got to have somebody there. You got to have clear communications. So see, these are some of the key things that you got to have, as a leader, as part of your characteristic for any individual that's going to lead your organization or your alumni association. Next slide. Okay, so identifying some of the characteristics. As a military person, we always like to have these little, I guess, acronyms that we, tend to have. And you can see, we have that leadership there. All right, and the leadership breaks down all of the things that we think would make a good leader, within the, within the alumni association, within the characteristics for our individual. So you can see there, and I'll go through a couple of them. You definitely got to have loyalty. You want to make sure that you have somebody that's, again, that word, committed, to what it is that they're doing, and they're loyal to this organization. You got to have someone that has respect. I throw respect out there because as a leader, you're going to be, again, leading other individuals, but you're going to have to be, respectful for people. Just because you are in the position of leadership does not mean that you're the overall king or queen of everything that's going on. You have to ensure that you have respect for the body, you have respect for people's time, you have respect for any and everything that's going on. And then I would say you definitely have to have integrity there. Okay, and then a passion for what it is that you're doing, as you lead the alumni association. What is one of the key things that we want to do in this alumni association? We want to ensure that we're giving back to Morgan. We want to ensure that, we're pointing out all the great things that Morgan's doing so we can continue to bring other individuals in, to our beloved Morgan. So, that leadership that you're going to be espousing there, that's part of that process that's going to help you get through. And you have to ensure that you have individuals, that, have those things, in their kit bag, as we like to say. Next slide. Okay, so I don't have to tell you what a president did. We know that the president sets the tone of the organization. We know that he or she is the leader of the organization. We know that, they come up with the strategic plan and, and they work along with their executive council to ensure. So I don't have to sit here and tell everyone, what are the tasks of presidents are. As you can see, you can see it in the slide there. Again, if you have any questions or comments about that, feel free to raise your hand as we move forward in this presentation. Next slide. Vice president. This, I always say is key because you got to ensure that the vice president and that president, are tethered in together, that they work together. The vice president's goal is there to support the president, support the organization, but also, the vice president has to ensure that, they're keeping the president, online within the boundaries, and also pushing things forward. The vice president have to ensure that they're ready to assume the responsibility of the presidency. You don't need somebody that said, well, I don't want to be the vice president. I mean, I don't want to be the president, but I'll be the vice president. Because at any given time, he or she may have to step into that position for, you know, a whole host of reasons, be it family issues, be it work issues, be it health issues, and you have to step in. So, you know, when you come in as the vice president, that person that you're looking for to be a vice president, you have to say, can that person also serve as the president? Okay, next slide. Secretary. You know, as we look at that secretary, and I can tell you, you know, from my time, you know, as the president of the Alumni Association for ROTC, that secretary is very important. You know, they're the person that's helping to keep a lot of things organized. They're the ones that's keeping, you know, things moving forward. When you look at that, you know, that secretary, it's not just those little things that they have there, but all of those other things that they may have to do. You know, where we're at today, right now, you find that we're doing Zooms. You know, we have all of those little type things that's going on. You know, they may have to be prepared, you know, to handle issues and things like that, setting up Zooms, ensuring that all the paperwork is out, you know, reaching out to individuals, you know, ensuring that he or she are going to make meetings. You know, so it's more than just, you know, what you see there with providing the agenda for the president and all that. That's a given, you know, but it's all of those things that that secretary is going to have to do that's not written down, that, you know, that we have to be prepared. So you have to ensure that somebody that you have that you're looking to be the secretary and to, you know, work in that line, they are prepared and they have the time. And again, that C word, that commitment to be able to do this. Next slide, please. And then, you know, finally, the treasurer. We knows that, you know, money and finances and fundraising is the lifeblood of many of these organizations. Why? Because the intent of the organization is to be able to give back to Morgan. The intent of the organization is to be out there and work within the community, keep the good name of Morgan out there, and then keeping individuals, reaching out to get individuals to come to Morgan. So you can't do all that just because you got a good heart. You have to ensure that you have, you know, the financial means to do that. So you have to ensure that whoever that treasurer is, one, somebody that has integrity, somebody that you can trust. And again, that word that I always like to say, they are committed to doing what it is that he or she needs to do in order to keep moving the organization forward. Next slide. Okay, and now we talk about the responsibilities and tasks associated with each of these offices. I already went through that. You already have an idea of what all of these positions, you know, what the task are, what it takes to do these positions. I don't have to say that again. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, next slide. Okay, and if you see the opportunities and challenges that come with serving in these organizations. One of the key things that we have to look at there, and again, I'm going to go back to that word again, that word of commitment, that there's a lot of other things that we have going on in our lives, just other than being, you know, within the Alumni Association. So one of those key things that I like to point out to this is family obligations. Family obligations all the time will take away from you to be able to, you know, do as much as you would like to do. Okay. It's a fact. So that's why you have to ensure that whoever that president is, whoever that vice president is, whoever that secretary is, you know, whoever that treasurer is, everyone is tethered together to be able to work, because at different times, you know, you may have to assume those responsibilities because of other obligations that somebody may have, be it family, be it professional, be it other organizations. A lot of us are involved in multiple organizations. Some of us are involved in various things within our community. So you have to just be ready, you know, to serve. And I always go back and I'll keep saying that word and I'll keep beating that word in. Commitment to what it is that we're doing here. Next slide. Okay. Chapter elections. So, you know, this is interesting as we get into chapter elections. You know, what you have to take a look at, there's going to be these big chapters that's going to have, you know, 100 plus people. You're going to have some of the small chapters, you know, and we have to take a look at how we go about, you know, the chapter elections, you know, how you come up with the different slates. Each chapter is going to do things a little bit different. What we're giving you is somewhat of a left and right limit on how to do things, but this is not the end all be all. You know, you can take a look at this. And again, if you have some questions, you know, you can always feel free to reach back to us, because everything does not fit one chapter. You have to be ready to adjust and do some things different. Next slide.
Hey Sam, we got a question in the chat.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
In the event of a chapter election, in the event of elected officers unable to complete his or her term due to unforeseen circumstances, how much time is required to fill that position by the MSU National Association or the MSUAA?
Well,
Mike?
one of the things that I'll say, and some of our individuals that's online, they can also feel free to chime in. What does your bylaws say? So that's when your bylaws are going to be key. So your bylaws are going to state, what that succession plan looks like for any individual, if he or she have to, step away from their position. Or does anybody else have any thing that they would like to add to that?
I was going to say it needs to be filled as soon as possible or practical. I don't know off the top of my head what the association bylaws say, but especially if it's a key position like president or treasurer, you need to fill that position as soon as possible.
Right. And that's why I said it's key with that succession plan. So, off the back, if something happens to your president, you know that the vice president has to be prepared to step in. And just like, Mr. Bell just said, immediately they will be ready to step in. But again, take a look at your bylaws and see what your bylaws within each of your organizations say, because your bylaws are the laws that's going to govern your organization. Everybody's bylaws may be a little bit different, but there is no way in the world that you can continue to operate if you know that, say for instance, your president has been incapacitated for whatever the reason may be, or the vice president or something. Set that up in your bylaws and have that discussion before you get to that point. Does that answer your question?
Dominique?
Right. Feel free to come on the mic. If it's Dominique that had the question, feel free to come on the mic and we can discuss. Oh, she said yes. Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, move on. Next slide. So one of the things that you definitely want to take a look at as we move forward in this process, make sure as we talk bylaws here briefly, take a look at your bylaws and make sure that your bylaws are somewhat tethered into the MSU, National Alumni Chapter bylaws. Take a good look at that and go from there. All right. One of the things that you see on the slide here, we talk about, slate of officers and various things along those lines. Okay. In some of your bigger organizations, when it comes times for chapter elections, they may have someone that they nominate, for the nomination committee, and then that person is going to have a committee of people with them, and they're going to go out and they're going to try to come up with a slate of officers. All right. If you're in a bigger organization, you may do that. If you're in a smaller organization, then you got to probably be a little bit more creative. You can move on to the next slide. You probably got to be a little bit more creative on how you come about, your officer elections. Feel free to read through any of these things that we have here. And again, I know this is accessible to you. If you have any questions, definitely reach out. All right. If you're in one of the smaller chapters, then you might not be able to put a big, this big nomination committee together to go through. You're sitting there and maybe, 20 or 30 people, and, it's the same people that seem to be doing the work all the time. You can put together a committee, but that committee may not be able to come up with but the same names. And I'll go back and I will keep repeating that one word that I've been saying, the C word, during this entire presentation, that commitment. And that committee needs to make sure that they have somebody, or the people that they're putting on that slate are committed people that are going to, definitely want to do the job if elected to it. Next slide. Okay, so conducting chapter elections electronically. So this is interesting because this is fairly new to all of us now. As we've moved forward in this period of COVID has made things, has changed things around for us. Whereas where we met in person a lot, we may not be doing that now, or you may be doing some type of hybrid meeting. Okay, so Zoom and Zoom elections are something that is definitely done. If you have any type of questions and comments on it, I can tell you, definitely feel free to get in touch with me, and also Brother Alon Peoples here, because we at the ROTC Alumni Chapter, we did our elections, via the electronically. and there was no cheating. Okay, and so we know the way they talk about elections today and all this craziness. Well, we didn't have that problem, and we ensured that everybody was able to vote. So we have some information on that to be able to personally help you out with that if you need that. Zoom is definitely a way to go about doing things today. Naturally, I'm pretty sure everybody here has been in some type of Zoom meeting, some form, be it through your job, be it right here, right now, or currently using that process within your chapters. Next slide. Okay, and again, conducting chapter elections you see here. So we talked about how to go about that. We explained some of the mechanisms in the, as far as the nomination committee goes. If it's unclear with you, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. And we definitely gave some examples of various things that we can use in order to accomplish that. Next slide. Okay, this is a summary, of some of the things we talked about as it relates, to chapter offices and things of that nature. You'll see down at the bottom there's several resources that you have that you can reach out to. And again, feel free to contact me. Feel free to contact Brother LaSavia Tidwell. Heads a big hats off to him. He put this presentation together and has been doing a lot of work on it. Just unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. So that's the summary. That's what I have. Next slide.
Hey, Sam, before we jump, hey, just for the chapters, just to remind them, hey, once you have your chapter elections and you have a change, please make sure that you send your results of your elections and your new administration to the Alumni Relations Office. Vanessa Gray and the MSUAA Secretary right now, Gaynell Flemings, because it ties into a lot of things, and I'll get into that in the last presentation. But as soon as you're done, you got to provide that up. Thanks.
Right, you can move on. Okay. So this is a funny little piece that LaSavia like to put on there. And again, you keep hearing me say commitment. Commitment is like ham and egg breakfast. To the chicken, it's only a day's work, but to the pig, it's a total commitment. And that is a very, very true statement. So the question becomes, as you work within your alumni associations, are you going to be the chicken or are you going to be the pig? You got to make the call on that where you're at. Next slide. Do you have any questions, comments? All right, that's all I have for that. And I think I have the next slide too. So this is going to be really brief as we move on. This is about fundraising. And again, I don't have to tell you who I am. You already know. I just finished briefing you. But fundraising is one of the key things. You heard me briefly get into that when we talked about, it's the lifeblood of what we do here in the Alumni Association. Next slide. So we're talking about, various ways how to get started, dealing with donors and supporters, different ways of fundraising and some fundraising ideas. Next slide. Okay, so how do you go about coming up with some type of strategy as it relates to fundraising? One of the key things that you have to think about here is different ideas and how you're going to make that money. Again, we always know about car washes and bake sales and various things of those lines, but how are we going to do this? Who can we put our hands on to support us? How can we keep track of all that money? What are the different ways that we can go about fundraising and all that type of stuff there? Again, you can see the slides. I don't have to brief them to you. Everybody here is smart. They can read them. Next slide. Okay, so where do you want to go? As we move forward in fundraising, you have to definitely come up with what is your plan for making money and how much you think that you're going to need. So where do you go and where do you see your alumni association at, 2-3 years down the line as far as money? I will tell you this, and I'll share a little bit, so you can understand. One of the things that we did within the ROTC Alumni Association, we had a lifetime membership. Okay, and we took a look at lifetime membership. But as we move further down the line in our lifetime membership, we started understanding that, the lifetime membership was good, but it didn't bring in any money. So if someone had paid X amount of dollars, be it $300-400 for a lifetime membership, and they're still in 5-6 years from now, it does not help out the organization. So, you may have to go back sometime and revisit some of the things that you do. And that's where, you heard me say, where do you want to be at a couple of years from now as you move down those lines? How do you continue to, replenish your organization so we can ensure that we have funds? These are the things that you have to think about, the different strategies that you have to come up with, that will, align with your fundraising. Next slide. One of the things with it is, keep it simple. Don't make it so difficult, as you move forward, in this process to try to do any fundraising. Come up with some good strategies that's going to help you out. Set what your targets are going to be. Take a look. This is where we want to be at 6 months from now. This is where we want to be at 12 months from now. This is where we want to be at 30 days from now. And come up with various different ideas. What you see there is we have, what we talk, that SWOT analysis, and you heard Brother Lon Peoples already mentioned that. You have to do that. Next slide. Yeah, you have to get into that SWOT analysis. You have to talk about, what are the strengths of my, chapter? What is it that we could do? What are the weaknesses? What are the things? Some of the weaknesses may be that you can't get together all the time, that, you can't meet in person right now. So how do we go about making that money? Some of the weaknesses may be we have an aging population within the chapter and we can't necessarily get out there. One of the strengths that you may have in your, in your chapter may be you have an aging population and they have a lot of money and you can reach into them, so that can go both ways. What are some of the opportunities that you're going to be, confronted with? What's the things that's coming, on the horizon where you can possibly, make some money, i.e. homecoming is coming up. It's an opportunity, to do something. And then what are those threats that's out there that's going to prevent you? Threat, COVID, putting a hold on things and various stuff like that. So just make sure you do a good SWOT analysis, as you break down how you want to go about your fundraising. Next slide. This is key here as you talk about, identify that donor base. We have people, you have people that's out there that can, give money on the regular because, some of these individuals have, done quite well in their life and they've been, identify those individuals and make sure, you're talking with those individuals and getting them involved, so you can have that constant stream of funds that may come in, build that, move forward, come up with that, that vision. There's that mission, those values and those various things that you want to come with. All right, next slide. And here, we talk about the fundraising cycle. So, know your donor, plan that approach. How are you going to go about talking to him or her or, that organization in this case? Don't be afraid to make the ask. Ask the individuals for what is, you want. A closed mouth does not get fed. Okay. Or the squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's what we always like to say. And after you get those, show that appreciation, reach back to individuals. Don't just, I got the money from them and I'm going to move on and not show your appreciation, because guess what? This is a cycle. It's going to keep going on and you're going to keep coming right back around to them. Keep up that conversation and then the cycle starts over again and again and again, as we move forward, in this process of trying to fundraise. Next slide. All right, different type of ways to fundraise. Again, with COVID, we've come up with, various ways to do this, but the website, everybody knows about website, about crowdfunding, that you can do there. Social media through, Eventbrite. I don't know about online gaming, but, that's there, and then, look at your cash donations, advertisements, calling on the telephone, asking if you want to have, some type of, telephone type thing. Excuse me, I'm just messing that word up. As you reach out to try to make money for your organization. Next slide. Okay, and here's some ideas that we use. We did, I know at Morgan, we did the raffle. We do the 50-50 raffles at some of the football games and various things like that. This is just some ideas. This isn't all encompassing. This isn't all knowing. If you got some great ideas, feel free to share them, with others so, they can come up with different ways, to make money and give some fundraising ideas. Next slide. Okay, and this is just, again, a quick summary, of what we talked about as it relates to fundraising. You can see the resources that's down the bottom there. And again, this is big family. Feel free to reach out. You got any questions, comments? If you have any questions at this time right now, feel free to ask them. If not, move on to the next slide.
Nicole, you have a question?
I do. So if you have members who have businesses, and going back to your subject of donors, could they still be someone you reach out to, though they are a chapter member?
Yes, you can absolutely reach out to individuals that, that may be a member that may, have that business. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the short answer to that is yes. Does anybody from the executive council have any comments on that?
No, that's a good idea.
Nicole, the only thing I would advise you is that when you do that, just want to make sure that you keep it business to chapter. So when they do reach out to you and you're using your 5013C, you actually are providing them back with a letter saying that thank you for your contribution or donation, and you're providing them back a letter back to their business so they'll get their tax write-off. So everything is separated so it's not showing any type of shenanigans. So that's the one thing that you do have to do, similar to how the foundation at the end of the fiscal year or the calendar year, they're sending out letters to people that donate to the foundation. We as chapters that's claiming a 5013C, we have to do the same thing to those who donate to our chapters outside of fundraising.
Thanks, Alon. The other question I have, two parts, because I know usually when we send out that letter to our individuals that have done donations, it's on our letterhead. Does it have to be on our letterhead, but include the association's letterhead as well?
Within my chapter now, and I'm not speaking on everybody else, from my experience, and again, I want to share from the ROTC point of view. If you donate into the ROTC chapter, when I write a letter response, I'm writing it from the ROTC chapter. You give to us, I'm responding from the ROTC. Any other chapters tell how they do it?
And Alon, I could chime in on that also. And the thing about, with the ROTC chapter, ours just tends to be a little bit different than how we operate, as it relates to funding there. Because we've had members that, within the ROTC alumni chapter that would be ready to give funds directly to, say, the professor of military science, and we used to say, no, we don't want you to do that. We want those funds to be cycled through the alumni's bank account, because being a 501c3, and we don't get the PMS or the ROTC organization in any type of financial shenanigans, as we would say. That's probably not something that a lot of the other alumni associations have, so that's not something that you would probably deal with. But yes, one of the key things is your letterhead, feeding it back to them, just like Brother Alon just said, and it shouldn't be a problem. You about to say something, Mike?
You cleared it up. They should be separate.
Mhm.
Chapter to chapter, business to business.
Does that answer your question, Nicole?
It sure did. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Alon, we can move to the next slide. And any questions or comments that anyone may have? Okay, well, hey, again, appreciate, all those that are here today. If there's anything that we can do, to assist you, within your chapters, by all means, reach out and let us know. We always share, like they said, we're one big family.
Okay, I'm back. I'm going to be seen, be brief, be gone. This is a short presentation, and we're coming into, we're on final approach. landing lights on, landing gear down. Uh, what I'm going to present here is chapter membership outreach, management, and recruitment. Next slide, please. For your membership outreach, you want to plan events that are enjoyable, that members want to attend and support. Establish dues payments for new members and recruit young members. Sell or market your chapter. And let me say a quick point about dues. When you graduate from Morgan as alumnus, you should register for the association, and you're automatically 2 years no dues payments are required. That's the same criteria we have in the ROTC chapter. Your first 2 years, there's no dues required after graduation. And yes, that's me with that nice cold beer at an event that we were at the baseball game. That's what I mean by, and that's Vanessa. That's what I mean by plan things that are going to bring members to your chapter, so you can do exciting things and build up your chapter base. Next slide, please. Here are a few recruitment points I want to go over. You want to advertise and distribute chapter information so people stay informed. You want to encourage members to invite new members. So when we first stood up the ROTC chapter, a lot of us went out and got our classmates, friends, and family members to help build the chapter. And bring in guest speakers, people that are interested in your chapter, bring up some nice key topics. Maintain an accurate and updated roster. That's very important, that you maintain an updated membership roster, because that's the only way you're going to reach out to members. And then after a while, you'll see some members kind of drop off. You want to reach out to those members that are no longer active, ask them why they're no longer active, and get them re-engaged in your chapter. And you should also establish a renewal program to bring those members back in. And another key point is communicate periodically with your members. If your members never hear from you, they're going to go off and do something else. So it's important to maintain that line of communication between all members. This is a picture of the ROTC chapter when it in its early beginnings. Next slide, please. I told you this would be a brief presentation. Wrap up. Here are the key points. Sell your chapter. Tell people what you're doing. Get people excited. Go out and do things just like the newly formed cheerleading chapter. They've done a couple events this past year. Plan events that are enjoyable, that can be supported. In the ROTC chapter, we used to have, and we still do have, tailgates events at the games. So that encourages people to come out to your tailgate, get them signed up, and make them a member of your chapter. Maintain that accurate roster and establish a renewal process. And by all means, maintain communications with all your members. Are there any questions? Be seen, be brief, be gone. Thank you.
We got a question from Nicole. Nicole?
Good
Yes,
afternoon,
Nicole.
I
everyone.
didn't have a question this time. I apologize with my hands up.
No, but it's me, Nicole Purcell. I'm with the Central PA alumni chapter. We were chartered right at the start of the pandemic in 2020. So it's been kind of hard recruiting members and keeping them engaged, the members that we do have? Any suggestions on, now that we're coming out of it, what, what type of activities we can do to recruit folks?
Okay, I have a couple of suggestions. Mr. Sam Chisholm, he went over a couple of them. You can do the hybrid and Zoom. You can do meetings in hybrid as well as Zoom, and have some type of activity. I've seen a lot of activities on Zoom. Like we have chapter night out, and we have from the association level where they play games, those sort of things, get people engaged, have a conversation. It doesn't have to be anything exaggerated, but just put something together where you can get people energized and get interested in your chapter. And now that COVID's coming, is kind of, it's not going away, but it's kind of eased up. You may want to try a couple of things in person, like a get together or something of that type. I hope that answers your question.
Hey, Mike, I would like to add to that. So if I heard her correctly, she said that they're a new chapter that's just getting started up, and you're up in PA, you said, Nicole?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So one of the challenges that you may be confronted is the fact that you don't even know who's up there. Okay.
Exactly.
Right. So what I would say in that case is, if there's a way to reach back to the university and maybe the alumni association and try to find out, who's in your vicinity. Because once you find out who's in your vicinity, and they may be, ability to get some email addresses, we definitely don't want to, break into anybody's personal space on that, but you can then find out who's in your area. And then from there, you can come up with some type of letter or something reaching out saying, hey, this is the Alumni Association, in the Western PA area or whatever. Because sometimes people don't even know that it exists. And you just happen to bump into somebody at a grocery store that went to Morgan because they're wearing a Morgan hat or shirt or something, and then you guys start there. So I would just say if there's a way to reach out to the alumni to find a list of people that may be in your area, that's probably a good starting point also.
Thank you.
I think T.C. Newman had a question.
Actually, Colonel Chisholm just hit upon what I was questioning or commenting on. Here in Florida, we have the issue of not knowing who is in Florida, who is moving to Florida. And in the past, we have reached out, and the Alumni Association actually sent us a list of Morgan graduates who were in the state of Florida. Now, COVID. In Jacksonville, we probably only have 6 members. But since COVID, we've been meeting on Zoom, and we have upwards of 20 people now on the Zoom meetings, but the vast majority of them don't live in Florida. So we're a very unique chapter in that socialization and just staying together is one of our primary goals. And we've been capitalizing on that. And word of mouth just to find other members.
Oh, absolutely. And the ROTC chapter, being in the military, we have members all over the world.
Yes.
And Zoom has really helped with that.
All right.
Any other questions?
Angela, we have a question from Angela, then we'll be followed by Jill.
Hi. So speaking of that, so I am a new president at the PG Alumni chapter, and I had a question. Is there some? I know we talked about President's Night. I think it's called President's Night Out. I'm not sure, but is there like
Chapter night out.
Yes. So is there another form where? Because I know for our chapter, we kind of it'll be good to get other ideas from other chapters on certain things that we probably might need to do better in that maybe another chapter is doing really well. So is there like a forum or something that the Alumni Association has where other chapter members, or not chapter members, but executive board leadership can talk to each other and maybe do some idea sharing or Just thinking about how, just exchanging ideas of how each chapter can do better in.
I will talk about that the next briefing.
That's coming
Topic.
up in the
Oh,
next
okay.
presentation. But that was one of the byproducts of this workshop to enable chapters to do better. Also, I already mentioned the hybrid and Zoom type meetings. And President Davis, she sponsors a chapter night out where there's an exchange of ideas. But Mr. Lon Peoples, he'll be going over that in the next presentation. And I think Sam Chisholm, I'll share a quick story with you. He said, "You don't know where Morganites are." I was in Edinburgh, Scotland. I came out of the railroad subway station. And I had my Morgan hat on. And this gentleman comes up to me and he says, "Sir, I need to shake your hand. I'm Morgan State class of 2002. Now, we're over in Scotland. He was there for the festival at the castle. Of course, I was over there playing golf at St. Andrews. But wear your gear. You'll be surprised how many Morganites you run into." That's all I have.
All right, Jill, do you still have a question? All right, I'll take that as a no. All right, I guess I'll be the last one that's going to be presenting today. So, well, no, Jill, your hand is back up. Jill? Jill, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. What I wanted to say was, in terms of finding other members in your area, yeah, you can request it from through the Alumni Relations Department, but also if you happen to have one of the alumni directories, because they made hard copy ones and there are also digital ones. It breaks down the alumni in your area, in your state, down to the counties, and I think maybe even the cities where they live. And so you can find them that way as well.
Hey, Alon, Mike Bell, there's a question in the chat about the use of Morgan State University paraphernalia. I think you're going to go over that in your presentation. Copyright restrictions, that type of thing.
Yes. Who was that from?
Dominique Mitchell.
All right. Yeah, Mike, if you can you just remind me about that later on in the briefing?
I sure will.
Thank you. All right. I just muted myself and I had to start the presentation. So, thank you very much. So, hey, I'm the last presentation for for today. Again, Alon Peoples. I'm the president of the ROTC, and I got hornswoggled into being the IT committee chair at the MSUAA level. So I help deal with the actual IT at the association level and below. And I came out in 2002. So here's the actual agenda. Again, I'm on a level set. I'm gonna talk about the approach, continuous service improvement, how we get after what we did, and what's next. One of the things that was a outcome, and I will talk about this, when we had our workshop back in 2020, there was such a big call out from the chapters that they asked the actual IT folks to make a lot of moves and make a lot of changes to the way that we do business and the products that we had. We made a lot of major changes over the last 2 years, especially during the pandemic. So because of that, I'm here. I'm going to show you what we've done and what we are still doing to improve the footprint to make life easier for the actual alumni and for the MSUAA. So let me get to the next slide. So again, I want to go off with level setting. So let me start off with this. When you think about technology, people have a different aspect of when we look at technology and they think it's the end all be all. However, no, technology helps enable what you're trying to do. Really is one part of a three-legged stool, and it has its purpose. It's enabling. But you got to remember, you got to have your people, which is the most important tangible resource, but you got to put in that actual process. You got to put that process together. Then you slide in technology. Because again, if you don't have a process and your people don't know what they're doing, throwing in technology in the middle of that will add a whole bunch of confusion. And that is not what you want to do. And again, just like my last briefing, my first briefing before, you don't have to do everything that's in this presentation. This is a reference point. This is going to be, hey, this is everything under the sun. With maturity, you could get to that place of nirvana. But again, this is just a roadmap to get you there. But understand everything that I will talk about is going to have to revolve around these 3 points here: people, processes, and technology. All of those things are within this framework called organizational behavior in our culture that we deal with. And at any time, please ask any questions since we got time and I don't have to speed through it. So this is one of the things that we do here because I don't think I have any other IT person on here on a call right now. So as a leader, sometimes, you know, we say this is what we want. The chapter needs a cloud. I need a website. I want security everywhere. And I need you to fix your Twitter book site on LinkedIn. So you as your leaders in your chapters, you might not know what you're talking about. You heard great words out there and you're saying it to some great IT guy or gal, and you're telling him or her these things to the IT committee chair, and you're just confusing them because you really don't know what you want. And the way that you're saying it is very hard to picture in your IT committee chairman's mind. So this presentation is going to help you to articulate what you want and an approach you should take dealing with your chairman. So when you look at information technology, the biggest thing that you want to look at is trying to figure out there's a gap in whatever you want to do and you want to close it. Look at it as a product. So again, what is the problem? Figure out your target audience. Again, just like before, we looked at strategic planning before. What is your vision? What is your strategy? What is your goal? And then what is your features? What are we trying to do? All of this comes together for the things that we talked about from the first session all the way up to this point. All this has to gel together. It cannot happen in a silo. But truly, it is a product. What are you trying to do? If you don't know what problems you're trying to solve, just don't throw or pretend to throw something at a fire because you might be throwing some great gasoline at a fire, and dinosaur juice costs about 13 cents a teaspoon these days. So I'm gonna ask you this question, and please, anybody, come online, come up and answer. What's the difference between a capability and a function? And you could throw out a product or a definition if you believe it, if you didn't look at the slides. But what's the difference between the two? Somebody. And don't be scared. It's only Christmas.
You must have capability in order to function.
Okay. Okay. So let me ask you this: is Amazon is Amazon a function or is Amazon a capability?
Capability.
Capability. Okay. Is Market Fresh a capability or is Market Fresh a function?
Hmm.
What
I'm
is
sorry,
market
not
fresh?
Market Fresh. I'm sorry, Amazon Fresh.
Um,
It's a function.
function, I would say.
It's a function. It's a function. So you're basically understanding what it is. So again, now I'm saying that so you understand that. So the problem that we run into as leaders, we learn cool names of things. We want the Googles. We want the I Apples. We want the Dells. We want the HPs. We want the this and that. We're calling things out by the product that we know, but we don't know what they do, and we don't know that it's a ecosystem that's involved in it. But we don't know its true functions. Not knowing, for this is an example, that there is different functions that live in that capability. I.e., under Google, you have an email function called Gmail, a drive called G Drive, and a Google Calendar and other stuff. So again, while we're talking, I'm going to be talking on a functional level of things that we need to have so you understand when you look at your IT requirements within your chapter and with your organization, look at your requirements at the functional level so you can become so you can understand your problem and really develop your solutions. So this is you've seen this before. If you was at the last workshop or you came to the IT workshop before, I'm gonna go through it a little bit, not medium speed, but please, if you're confused, it's been updated a little bit. Ask questions. So again, we're looking at the functions. There are 7 main functions dealing with the chapters that you should look at. Okay, these are the 7. We're going to talk about each one. One change is dealing with number 7, and that change is dealing with social media and social media schedulers. And we'll talk about that when we get to 7. So, first thing first, again, I want to take into account there are big chapters, little chapters. Some are more mature. When I say mature, I'm saying mature dealing with monies, resources, and individuals that are more IT tech savvy. So I have to provide solutions that are both high end and low end tech savvy. But again, look at the way that you manage your people. You go at it 2 different ways: websites, or you can find a tool that is no cost that you can use to manage your people. But however, again, your processes and what you're looking for is what data points are you looking for? Because again, when you look at your management of your people, there's certain things and certain characteristics that you have to pull, like names, years, address, emails, phone numbers, aliases, things of that nature. So wherever you look, you still gonna have to pull that information to create that type of database. Is really just a database, but how you manage it and where you manage it will determine where it sits, and that's a function. The next function is financial management, and this gets real tricky. Last session we talked about Todd Beasley talked about financial management, how to work it, dealing with the 1099, along with Leslie Hannibal. So this is just from the IT's perspective that we can pull it in different ways. So you got the big players down there, Quicken, PayPal, Zelle, WhatsApp. Then you also have all of the banking financial institutions that are that has the application where you can just pull the logs and you can manage your financial banking accounts through your through your different systems and things of that nature. But again, how your chapter works and how you decide to do this is on you. That is your process, but that is something that you have to figure out how you want to work that. But there is a way for you to work it. And the old way of I'm just going to keep a checkbook ledger, physical checkbook ledger, even it works. It works, and you're going to have to integrate that. And that, but that's the only thing that we're going to do. That is not the future. Any questions on this? Because I usually get the questions on this slide here. Okay. Next slide, dealing with next functionality is dealing with the collaboration. So collaboration is all collaboration, and I count voice, data, and video. So you know the instant messages, the texts, Gmail, WebEx, Zoom, freeconferencecall.com. So how do we talk and how do we do all of this? So you have to have that form of collaboration. And even though we are coming out of the pandemic, we have set a precedence of a new normal. We're going to still have to figure out a way to keep collaboration going on where there's some type of hybrid. And there's going to be a follow-on slide that's going to talk about some basic things in the new normal about how to conduct a hybrid type of meeting. But again, you're going to need that functionality of collaboration just on a regular, especially if you're part of a chapter similar to, I think, the cheerleaders. They have cheerleaders all over the country. So if the executive board is not physically located somewhere in the DC area, you know, when they have the executive board meeting, they will have to have some form of collaboration, and videos might be the way to go. File sharing. So, very important. You have to have that because old days of file cabinets sitting in somebody's house, we do a handover of offices between administrations, chapter administrations, and rolling out the file cabinets to the cars. That's not going to happen, especially if you're trying to attract younger members, and younger members don't have that space in their homes no more. They want to see it mobile, something they can put in the back of their phone and drive off with. So using this type of technology where there's some type of Google Cloud, Google Drive, OneDrive, website, Amazon Cloud, which is not up here. You gotta figure out some type of way to share documentation so it's not a total loss. And if you have an incident where individuals are not trying to relinquish data or intellectual property from your chapter, that's where this comes into play. And we've had that incidents before within some of the chapters, and I could tell you some of us have lived that dream. So Nicole, you have a question? Nicole Thomas.
Not a question, more of a suggestion. I think for organizational pieces, if people use the email address that Vanessa had assigned you all as a chapter, then you don't have to worry.
I'm going to talk about that. I got that. Okay. I got that. You. All right. So going to the next thing. Come on, buddy. Don't start doing this on me. Uh-oh. All right. So the next thing is dealing with event management. Event management, just so basically some type of calendar function. Again, just like how we talked about before, the advanced portion of the strategic planning, dealing with calendars. This is just a way that you can actually sit there and you can actually push reminders to your folks, either through their emails and that syncs to their phones, to let them know, hey, you got something going on. And I can tell you, this was something that was groovy that Vanessa and I figured out with WebEx, to let WebEx do most of the work and remind everybody, hey, if you register with WebEx in the system, it will send you an alert to your calendar, to your phone, and we don't have to remind you. And so that is just something that technology is doing for us. And you have that opportunity to do this, and it's called event management. Next, polling and surveying, like that was the technology. That's the technology and a function and a functionality just dealing with asking the questions or taking the elections. So different ways to do it. Websites have that built in there. Sometimes do the Survey Monkey, the actual uh poll election. I can't remember the name of it, but Survey Key, Doodle, uh WebEx, they have those simple polling and surveying tech tools already built into them. So you look at that form, you look at that function if you need it, if you don't, because again, some of us, like, because we are regional chapters, we don't need to have like electronic surveys or electronic polling going out. But those who are outside of a region and we're operating nationally, you have to look at that type of technology, especially when you're holding elections and you don't want to incur the cost of a postage and handling. And last but not least, social media. It is a evil that is going to be with us for a long time. So this is how the world talks to each other now, and depending on the generation determines what part of the circle that you hang out in and where you're at in life. So this is how we have to outreach to certain members in the alumni association. So there's some that we reach out to that are strictly male. Then there's some that are strictly email. Then there's some that are Facebook. There are some that are Instagram. There's some that are Instagram, Twitter. Now we're getting some that are TikTok. Time goes by, our alumni change. They change where they're at. We as chapters got to understand where they're at to find them on social media. So that's why we have to have a social media present. Now, one of the things that is hard for us to get, in us being sometimes a organization that have a lot more mature alumni, is there's a lot of different sites. I don't know how to do. There's different stipulations of how it works. There's a thing called the social media schedule where you could actually go to like one hub. So think of like this little guy and girl in the middle. You go to one space and you actually connect all of your social media to that one space. And then you put your messages or your pictures or whatever in that one space, and it formats it to the different accounts, and then it blasts it out based off of the time you want it to go out. That's why it's called a social media schedule. So you don't have to worry about going to all of these different accounts and changing the messages every time. So that's something that we're working on at the MSUAA level, but I was bringing that information down to you guys. So if you are sitting on multiple platforms for social media, that is something that you could possibly look at to save you time down at the chapter level. So saying all of that, there is websites. You can look at a website, and again, it can actually integrate all of that things, all those different functionalities, where you can have a single place and it makes it all nice for you. So you, instead of you bouncing all over the place on all over the internet to make it happen, you go to one central hub. Once you configure it, you go there, and that's where you manage it from. These are just 4 examples out of hundreds of examples. There are some people that are actually alumni that are so IT savvy and code developer savvy, they created their own. I say that's good and bad, double-edged sword, because if they leave with the keys to the kingdom, and you're stuck. So you have to take that into consideration. So with that being said, and I know I got your question, Nicole. Do you have any questions on the functionality? Because this is where we get into what is available to you guys as chapters and as alumni. All right. Okay. So this is okay. So this is what I want to show you guys and girls and the team. So please feel free, if you don't understand what these things are, I will tell you what they are and what they mean to you. So the Alumni Association, MSUAA, along with alumni relations, there's an IT portfolio, meaning that there's certain IT capabilities that we own that you have to understand that we own. That so when we own it, you can see who really controls it. And that was the issue that we ran in with the last time we did this session. And even when I did it earlier late last year. So we got this thing called Survey Monkey. Survey Monkey is a polling capability function. So the MSUAA controls that, not the alumni relations. Same thing with WebEx that we're on right now. The website is controlled by alumni relations, not by MSUAA. So, however, feedback, suggestions, and inputs come from MSUAA with the chapters. The email alumni.morgan.edu, controlled by alumni relations, through and requests come through MSUAA, but ultimate control is alumni relations. Preconferencecall.com, there's a MSUAA got their own version of that, not version, but account with those guys. There's a new version of Board Pack. That was, if you was here during the beginning of the pandemic, if you remember Board Max, this is the new version of Board Max. For all the shenanigans that was going on, things that was happening, our contract with Board Max went away. We acquired Board Pack. Myself and alumni relations is in the process of debugging, configuring that thing to set that up. So what that is going to turn into is a place of file sharing. And I forgot who asked the questions about sharing ideas amongst the like typing like a blogging type of thing between the chapter's leadership. I believe that functionality is there, so we could turn that on and we could play with that too. But I can't remember who asked that question. But that is where that functionality is going to live. So, like the recording for this session, the files from this session, it will actually get migrated over to BoardMax. Social B, I'm in the middle of testing that and I'm almost done with that. That is a social media scheduler that I was referring to 2 slides ago. And Bitly is a URL. That's the website shortener. So, sometimes when you create a website, it gives you a long Website name, if you use like Bitly, that's one thing and it shortens it. So again, I wanted to show you because this would give you a visual depiction of, okay, who controls what. So when I have to ask for something, I know who to ask. So with that being said, there's any questions on this slide if you don't, especially if you don't understand what these things do. Now don't be shy. If you don't understand this, please speak up. All right. So the website. So one of the things that we talked about the last time was that our website, the alumni.morgan.edu, was basically outdated. It was dated. So we worked on it, we fixed it, we updated it. One of the things that we was asked about was that, hey, build the smaller chapters don't have the capability or the knowledge to have a web page. All right, we did the research. We can't afford to manage web pages for all the chapters because there'll be a fee that the chapters and the organization MSUAA can afford. So we decided we could build what's called splash pages. So when you go to the alumni.morgan.edu and you click on chapters and classes, a map will pop up for chapters locations, and then you hit the drop down, the chapter will come up. So you get basic information about the chapter, just like we discussed with a format. So you'll get your chapter leadership information, you'll get your mission statement, your vision statement, upcoming events. And again, with this splash page, it's a redirection to whatever you have out there. So if you have any social media, any websites, your email, this is a redirection. So when alumni is looking for you, they will hit this page and find you and get your most current information. Angela, what is your question?
Yes, I saw this page and it looks it looks really good, but I was wondering who, because PG chapter is not on here, so who do we need to contact to get our information on there?
Okay, let me finish this slide brief and I will tell you exactly what's going on. So when we initially did this, we sent this out to all the chapters, said, give us the information back. We had everything built. Just give us the information. We'll fill in the data. Out of that, actually, we got 16 out of 54. So basically 38% of the chapters returned the data back to us. So I was like, hey, how'd everybody else? So if you want to get your information on there, at the bottom of this page, there's a link for submission. So if you want your chapter to be shown, click the link, submit the form, give us 72 hours work days, not the weekends, and then we'll work and get your stuff up there. Because again, we want to get all 54 chapters shown on here. But again, all the information that is linked to this, just like we said before, you got to have your vision statement. You need to have a vision statement. You got to have a mission statement. You have to tell us those forms that you have to fill out and send to Vanessa and the secretary. You know, you got to have all that information. That's why all this comes together, because we need that information to put on there. So does that answer your question, Angela?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. So is there any questions about this? But again, it's the form. Is there any questions about this? And there's other good information on here. Scholarships. If you have things like, because I know I talked to DC, they have information about scholarships they want to get posted onto this website. We could post things about your scholarships for your chapters or for people in your regions, so you could push them here. So if you want things posted here, we can do that. When we have announcements about alumni, we can work all of that, but we just need the data points on the websites. But right now, I'm just advertising about getting your chapter advertised to get this filled out as much as we can. So the next thing, so I'm going back to Nicole's question and comment. So it's time for the emails. So it's time for the email. So basically what happened was 2 years ago when the pandemic started, I realized that we could get every alumni is actually authorized to receive a email account, a first name dot last name, year that you graduated at alumni.morgan.edu. Great. A lot of people wasn't taking advantage of that. Okay. So I was like, hey, why don't we let the chapters also get a chapter at alumni.morgan.edu? The reason why is because when you go out there and try to solicit for stuff like resources, donations, and we're begging for money, if you're giving them a gmail.com, like, yeah, you're not real. But if you're giving them an alumni.morgan.edu email address, you look real. So it gives you more validation that you are a real organization with an extension of EDU. So we developed a schema, or basically a naming convention for chapters. So now chapters at the chapter level can get a chapter email account. So just like Nicole Thomas said, so we got cheerleaders chapter at alumni.morgan.edu and things of that nature. So we have a request form for that. The good thing about the way that Morgan's has done it is it's powered by Google. So because it's powered by Google, you get all of the functionalities that Google provides, i.e., calendar, Meet, Drive, Forms, Sites, which is websites. So you get all of these extra things that you can manage under your chapter under your chapter username. So you as an individual can get one, you as a chapter can get one. The executive council gets one, the position wise, and the MSUAA committees can get one. But again, that is done because we can't manage below the chapter level. But that is ready to go right now. So with the emails, do I have any questions about you guys getting or requesting emails?
No, but this is Barbara. I think this is a wonderful idea. I was unaware of this, and I knew other universities was doing this, and so I'm happy to know that Morgan is doing this also. So I'm gonna get my request in.
How soon could we actually get email addresses assigned, and can it be multiple within a chapter?
So to get email addresses assigned. So again, if you got the presentation right now, was that Tyon?
Yes, it is.
All right. So if you have the presentation right now, you click on the link, you can fill out the form right now. Right, but the thing is, we're not working on the weekend. This is Miller time, but Monday we'll submit the forms, and then it usually depending on the load, It takes us about, like, as soon as we start working through it, it's a manual process. Because again, it's just not like regular Gmail where you go in there in the system and you put your own stuff, because we got to validate you are you and things of that nature. Once we validate all of that stuff, whatever email address you provide, we'll start sending the information like, hey, we provided you this, like, create your password based off of that. But it was going to be within the 72 hours. You got to give us 72 hours during the working days to do that. Now, we're not doing bulk um emails. So individuals have to submit their individual requests. So you submit one for you. If you want to submit one for your chapter, two different requests. If that makes sense, Tyon.
Got it.
Yes, but again, for those in a chapter, this link, you can share this link with your members of your chapter. Then your chapter, you can share it with them. We have no issues of creating that, because again, the alumni relations, what happens after the university, correction, after the commencement ceremonies in June and May, they shut down for like a week and a half to create everybody's email that graduates. So they do this for everybody. And then once you get put in the MSU alumni.morgan.edu domain, you can search for people in that domain and email each other relatively easy.
What was, I guess, what was the threshold and of starting that process, and have other alumni been grandfathered in, or is it just now, if you feel like you haven't received that, you just make the request for the individual?
So again, I don't know when they started. I just know that it is available, and the thing is, now that it is available, and now that we got the people and the processes together to announce it, that's what we're trying to do.
Got it.
That's what we're pushing. And again, now, and especially with us going to a, not a virtual, an electronic election for at the MSUAA level, this is going to help get to that. So if we pushing everybody to get their alumni.morgan.edu account, that will help us to get that. So I'm not getting kickback on dead emails that's sitting out there in the world. Okay.
Got it.
All right, Nicole.
Just a quick suggestion. What we learned is when we originally started, we had two addresses, one from you all and one that we had created before we received you all. And one had for the executive level, and one we had for just the chapter. It became too much as far as with sharing files and so forth. So what we decided to do is just use the alumni chapter one. And that's where we share all of our files and everything. And then there's just different folders within the drive that we have only for the executive board and only for the chapter. So just something to consider when requesting the email addresses from the association.
Nicole, I think you bring up a great point. So, Elan, I have another question. If a chapter has already established a email account that was under Gmail, here we come. Is there any technical support, or is there any advice given to try and migrate over? Don't roll your eyes. Migrate over anything from our existing Gmail account, so that, again, if we want to proceed with the new, and also either link out or notify anyone that had the previous address that we've gotten a new email, or a way to forward email.
Okay, so I will tell you this: if you're on the line and you already have a Gmail chapter account, because I was going to wait for the next slide on this one, I would say keep your Gmail account available. One of the cons of this, because it's now this account this account is and it's four more. This account is only a 4 gig, so you don't have that much space. And I'm
Got
going
it.
to give you topics, references on how to forward this to your regular Gmail account. So again, but when you sending out this message as your like official email, you should use this as your official email going out. But again, you can use this as official email and then storage. So there's different processes you can use. Where in it you can be talking about that later on another time. But it's forwarding instructions that I got for you in this presentation. Okay. All right. So the next slide is dealing with your hybrid meeting. So again, like I said, 20 March of 2020 changed the world. We went to 100% hybrid because we were scared to go outside because everybody had the Rona, and then somehow like this year everybody was cured, but somehow we got monkeypox. So now that we're looking at the people trying to do both a hybrid meeting, really what that means is, if you don't know, is that hey, you got folks, a lot of people in one location, but you got folks that are still hybrid. So there's really 5 things that you really need. And again, from a technical point, is in the red, gray is people, blue is process. So from the technical point, you need a connection to the internet, however you may get it, but those are examples how you may get it. Your collaboration, that functionality. So however you were doing it before, the equipment, and I do recommend that you have speakers, especially if you have multiple people in the room. Okay, so those are the 3 in a laptop, or a laptop or a computer or whatever it may be. Phone is kind of but those are the 3 things you need from a technical standpoint. From a people's perspective, you're going to need a facilitator that's able to watch both the room and the virtual standpoint, so you don't leave the virtual people just hanging out there, just monitoring dead space. But then you got to look at your process of how you're going to manage that. So when it comes down to hybrid meetings, you have to look at those 5 components when you want to sit there and you want to do a hybrid meeting. Is there any questions on this?
Hi, this is Angela. I have a question. Well, I guess a comment. So I'm actually kind of tired of meeting through Zoom. So I'm trying to figure out a way to do a hybrid meeting. But I don't. For my first question, I guess I don't know if anybody else has tried to do a hybrid, but I would think that you probably need, in addition to the equipment that you have there, but microphones placed so that everyone can hear each other clearly. Because I know if we do start, doing the hybrid meeting, not everybody's going to bring their laptop. So, and then to like, get rid of any type of feedback that may happen within the meeting itself. But it may be good to have microphones. But I would be interested to see if anyone has, how that has worked with other chapters once we start doing this.
Yeah, so the best way for that is, one, you have basically, for in the meeting location, you have one computer that's your presenter computer, and everybody that has to present at that computer. So everybody's rotating to that computer. Again, with the speaker, that's the reason why you got the speaker, so they can, at least everybody can hear in the room. But if you have to speak, the speaker needs to come to the computer versus being planted in a seat.
Yeah, hey, This is Sam. So yeah, I've been a part of quite a few hybrid meetings, and her point is a valid one along with yours. You definitely have to present from that one computer. I mean, it would be great if you had mics strategically placed throughout the room, but you might not be able to get that. You know, one of the places where we've done a hybrid meeting, we've been fortunate enough to have a big room, and we were able to connect the computer into a bigger screen so the people sitting in the room could also see the folks that were up and the individuals that were on the meeting via Zoom. But they can work. It is great. It's a way to help people be comfortable. So I mean, if you can get it done, great. But yes, valid point. Everybody has to come to that one area and speak in order for the people on the Zoom to be able to hear them clearly.
All right. Any other questions on hybrids?
Just a comment. It's
Okay.
TC Newman.
All right, TC.
Check into local organizations. For example, here in Jacksonville, I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi, and we have a fraternity house where we have a room that is set up for Zoom meetings, and we rent it out to other organizations. So check in your local area and find out if somebody has already configured a Zoom room that is possible for you to use for your meetings.
Oh, that's a great point. Thank you. All right. So again, that was my last slide. That was my last product that I was presenting to you guys. So again, I provided this single sheet here. Uh again, I got a form for you guys to, so if you want your chapters page to be presented on the website, they go to form link right there. What if you want to email for your chapter, for your individual, again, that's the link to the form. Again, that is the the the, the link towards the MSUAA page. Again, for additional training, that's all the additional training. The one training that I think Tyan was asking about was dealing how to forward your Gmail. So if you go to this second to last one, that is the one I was talking about. It tells you like what you have to do. There's different characteristics that you can run through where it can delete or it will actually keep. So you look at that, pretty straightforward. It's only a 3-minute slide, but it shows you different ways to manage your emails. Also, one of the other questions I think, Mike, you had for me from the last thing dealing with paraphernalia or the icons, there is a resource that is called the MSU Graphic ID Manual. It's located in the additional folders on the Google Drive um drop. So it'll talk to you about what you can and can't use it, how it should be displayed, and what colors to use. Also, this is the website on the Morgan's page for that. Last but not least, this is the key takeaway. Technology is great, but it must be integrated between people and processes. Remember, your problem must have a target audiences. Determine that IT function and which ones has the high priority. You know, your strategy or how you deal with your IT must be part of your overall strategic plan. Always consider researching before you dive into something because everything is getting hacked these days and it's going to happen. And when in doubt, call a friend, phone a friend. It helps. Again, this is my information. We do have a committee email address. You should have been receiving emails from there, but that's how you could get after the committee. But that is all that I have from here, and I think I have one. What was that last thing from? Let
I
me
just want
see.
you to show the homecoming slide.
Which homecoming slide? The party?
Yes. October 8th.
Legacy,
The le- oh,
legacy extravaganza.
I think
Yes, that's it, the orange and brown Morgan extravaganza.
Legacy extravaganza.
Alon, while you're getting that together, is there a vendor that we use or that you all use for like banners and tents and so forth as we're preparing for homecoming?
not that I,
Print.
Okay, if you're doing a vent, if you're meaning for food on campus, you can only use now Sodexo, which is very expensive. And if you're talking about a tent, as in for a tent city, my understanding was there would be no tent city, that there would be some tailgating. But Mike may know a little bit more about that because the university wants everyone off the campus. It's either by 8 or 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
I
that
was
that is
aware of that,
correct. I
Madam
think she was
President.
asking about getting a chapter banner made for their chapter or that sort of thing. Is that what you were asking?
Oh,
Correct.
okay. Well, Mike, you might know that because we have our ROTC banner.
Yeah, I don't know if they're still in business, but if they are, I'll get the information to you.
So to answer the question about the tent, so there, just for everybody's clarification, there will be tent city this year for the organization. Montebello parking lot is in 2019. So right now, from what I understand, Florida County Federal will be running that portion of the campus for those organizations requesting large tents. So I do know that the Omegas, the Kappas, the Iotas, the Sigmas, and other organizations that have already requested tents on that lot. And these tents come with sides, lighting, electricity, and sides and heaters. So if you're requesting a large tent, the largest one I believe is 30 by 60. Please contact Floyd Kelly Farrow or Ms. Williams, who is the director for student, is the director of Student Center at Morgan State University.
can you see that flyer? All right. Who is talking about it? I got it up. No, I'm not. I'm.
Madam President said to display it. I got one more additional thing. This is a reminder that there's going to be a call for folks for the nomination and tellers committee for the upcoming elections in 2023. So please volunteer to get on that committee. Thank you.
So one more thing about the Saturday evening event, the Morgan Homecoming Extravaganza, and that's going to be, as you can see from the flyer, at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum. And a lot of us will be supporting, a lot of alumni will be supporting that event. Your ticket early. Parking is right across the street.
Thank you. So we're coming up on 3 o'clock. I think we've covered a great deal of information today, and I hope everyone enjoyed the workshop. And We wish you all the best going forward, and we hope to see you all at homecoming. So if there's no other questions or anything, I'm going to declare this plane landed and moving into the gate. And I wish everyone a happy evening. That's all from this end.
Thank you all for the presentation.
Again, thank you for your participation.
Good job,
Thank
Mike.
you. Have a good weekend.
Good weekend.
Good.
Thank you, Alon, for
Have a good weekend, everyone.
facilitating.
Oh, please take the survey before you go.
And don't forget the survey. And
Oh, gosh.
also, this will be available. This session will be available along with the parliamentarian session online at a later date. Madam President, you got anything else?
Nope, just do the survey, and thank you for everyone attending. Excellent information.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
All right, take care, everyone.
See ya.
Okay, once again, you guys did an excellent job. Along when I went to click on the survey, it wouldn't let me in. For some reason.
You couldn't get in it, Madam Chair, Madam President?
Sam, did you get in?
I'm in it right now.
Well, what is that? Alon must have did that on purpose.
Yeah, I think you set it up for the cubes and probably didn't want anybody else to be in it.
Hey, fellas. Hi, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing my survey now. Good God Almighty. I thought we would be off before him, but I know it was a lot. 158 pages. Greesh.
Well, hey, Alon got you out before 3.
Well, yeah, I was hoping to get off early like we did before.
2 minutes. 2 minutes before 3.
Okay, but still, that's before 3.
Huh?
I said that's still before 3. Mike Bell said
We have 2 minutes. You're correct. 2 minutes.